All right, in this video we are going to be talking about distribution as well as whether or not we should distribute when solving. So looking at this first problem, we have 2 times the quantity x minus 3, so we have parentheses around that x minus 3, and that equals 4. So one way of solving is that we could do what's called distribution. If I have something being multiplied to a quantity to some parentheses, what I can do is called distribute. So I could take this 2, I could multiply it to the x, and also multiply it to this negative 3. So sometimes that is the best route to go. Other times, as in, for example, this problem, it's actually a little bit more work to do that. Instead, one thing I could notice is since this 2 is being multiplied to this parentheses, I could divide it on both sides. Now, one reason why I may want to distribute instead of divide on both sides is if I were to divide both sides by this 2, I come out with a fraction on the right side. So I may not want to do that. But in this case, I can easily divide by 2 on both sides and get an integer out. So I'm going to, instead of distributing, I'm going to divide both sides by that 2. Because when I do that, on the left side, this 2 divided by this 2 are going to cancel away. And on the left, I'm just left with this x minus 3. And 4 divided by 2 is just 2. So now I'm looking at these parentheses and I don't have anything being multiplied to them anymore, so I can actually just drop them. So I'm going to go and erase these parentheses. So now it's just a normal problem. I have something being added or subtracted to this x, so I need to get rid of that. So instead of a negative 3, I'm going to add 3 to both sides. So the negative 3 and positive 3 cancel, leaving me with x equals 5. So you could have distributed there. You could have multiplied the x and the negative 3 by 2 and then done the exact same process. You just would have at the very end divided by 2 on both sides. So there's a lot of things you can do. So let's look at this next example. So here I see a binomial in a fraction. So if you remember from the past videos, I told you anytime you see a binomial in a fraction, you should start by putting it in parentheses. So this problem is actually trickier than a lot of other problems because as of right now, what is being divided is actually the x minus 3 because 2 is being divided by that x minus 3. So I can't just divide both sides by a 2 because that's not going to do anything for me. So what I'm actually going to do is, since the x minus 3 is being divided on both sides, I'm actually going to multiply by that quantity of x minus 3 on both sides. So I'm going to multiply both sides by this x minus 3. Since x minus 3 divided by x minus 3 is the exact same thing, so no matter what you can imagine, you plugging in any number for x, it's going to be the same number over the same number. So anything divided by itself is always 1. So on our on our left side, this x minus 3 and this x minus 3 are actually going to cancel. So I'm left with a 2 equals a 2 times the quantity x minus 3. So anytime you have a variable in the denominator, you're actually going to need to multiply it to get it onto the other side because we can only we only solve for things that are in the numerator. So now looking at this problem, I need to go and solve. So again, I could go and I could say, hey, I'm going to distribute this 2. But I see that if I actually divide both sides by 2, I get out again another really nice number. So I'm going to do that instead. So I'm going to divide both sides by 2. So if you notice on both of these two examples I did, I'm dividing the entire side by this 2. So you can actually see that I'm doing this division line across the entire right side because I'm actually dividing the entire right side by that 2. But this positive 2 and this 2 in the denominator are going to cancel away to give me 1, because 2 divided by 2 is just 1. And over on the left side, I'm going to do 2 divided by 2, and I get out again 1. So on the right side, I'm left with x minus 3. So now, again, I have nothing being multiplied to these parentheses, so I'm just going to erase them. And I'm going to add 3 to both sides. So on the right side, that's going to cancel, and on the left side, 1 plus 3 gives me 4. So we get out x equals 4 as our final answer. All right, let's work through some more examples on this, just so you can get more comfortable with it. So here, again, I could start by dividing both sides by this 3, but then I'd get a 7 divided by 3, and that's not going to be a nice number. So instead of having to work with fractions, I'm going to do a distribution. I'm going to take this 3 and I'm going to multiply it to everything inside of the parentheses. So multiplying it to everything inside of the parentheses, 3 times x gives me 3x. 3 times negative 2 gives me negative 6. And that still equals 7. So now I can work this like a multiple step equation. So I'm going to start by getting rid of anything being added or subtracted. So I have this minus 6, so I'm going to add 6 on both sides. So that cancels, so I get 3x equals 13. And the last thing I just need to do is divide both sides by this 3. And since 13 divided by 3 cannot be simplified because 13 is a prime number and so is 3, that is my final answer. So I could have started by dividing both sides by 3 and I would have just needed to work with a fraction. And that's totally acceptable way of doing it. So whichever way you are comfortable adding, or if you're comfortable with adding fractions, multiplying with fractions, it's a great way to go. A lot of times it's a little bit quicker. So let's try this next problem. So again, I'm looking at a fraction and I see a binomial in my denominator. So the thing I need to do is I need to put that binomial in parentheses. So again, my variable that I'm solving for is in the denominator. So that means I need to multiply it over. So I'm going to go and multiply both sides by the quantity of this 2x plus 1. So again, I'm going to wrap it in parentheses. I'm going to be multiplying both sides by this 2x plus 1. So again, since these two things are the exact same thing, 2x plus 1 divided by 2x plus 1, these are going to cancel away. So this is going to disappear. So that's again the reason why we were multiplying both sides by it, so I can get the x up in the numerator and actually start working with it. So on the left side, I'm still left with that 1. And on the right side, I have a 2 times this 2x plus 1. So here again, I am at a decision. Should I divide that 2 or should I distribute it? So if I divided the 2, I'd end up with a fraction of 1/2, and I don't want to deal with that, so I'm going to distribute that 2 instead. So I'm going to take the 2 and multiply it to the 2x and to the 1. So doing that, I get 2 times 2x is 4x. 2 times 1 is 2. So now this is again back to a basic multi-step equation. So the first thing I need to do is get rid of any addition or subtraction. So I'm going to subtract this 2 on both sides. So on the left side, 1 minus 2 gives me a negative 1. And I'm left with a 4x because the positive 2 and the negative 2 canceled. And the last thing, I need to get rid of that 4. So I'm going to divide both sides by this 4. So those 4's cancel, leaving me with a negative 1/4 equals x. And we're done. So again, when you have something being multiplied to some parentheses, ask yourself, should I distribute or should I try to divide it over? So you saw us do two different examples for each kind of thing where it was either better to divide first or it was actually better to distribute. So here are two examples for you to try. So pause your video and work these two out and come back and check your answers. All right, so on the first example, you should have had x equals 9 halves. And on the second example, you should have gotten x equals 5. So if you did not get those, try to go back, see where your mistake was. Again, mistakes happen all the time, especially small ones. So just try to find out where your mistake was. So hopefully you won't make it the next time.